Today we are in Bay Cliff, Texas, about maybe 20-25 minutes away from Houston going south. Really quickly wanted to tell you a very weird story that took place here about 55 years ago. This story kind of interludes with a story that I did on my other channel about Butch Ainsworth and him breaking out of jail down in Galveston. And as it's starting to rain right now, we're gonna have to get right into the story, because also this neighborhood looks a little bit methy around here. Okay, let's hurry up and get out of here. So we're gonna go back to January 15th, 1967. So you had a kid back then. He was about 18 years old. His name was Carl Bruce Harris. Not much is known about his childhood other than the fact that he was in and out of foster care most of his childhood. I guess his parents were not there for him. So he was living at the time with his foster mom right down the street here, a woman by the name of L.V. Morwood. So January 15th, 1967, around 3:30 a.m., the fire department in Dickerson, which is right up this way from here, gets a call from Carl Bruce Harris. He's like, yeah, hey, my mom's dead. And they're like, okay. And he's like, yeah, hurry up, come quickly. Oh, and her friend is dead too. Her friend name is Martha Bean. Okay, so the fire department comes. I guess they didn't have 911 back in those days. I'm not really sure. So they come over to the house and they see Bruce there. He went by Buster for short. So they see Buster in the living room. And when they get into the house, it's covered in blood. Like there's blood on the walls and there's like blood all over on the floor. They go into one of the bedrooms and they see the two women lying in pools of blood on the floor. Both their necks had been slit. Obviously, there's nothing that they can do for them. They are, in fact, dead. So immediately, they secure the crime scene and they take Buster down to Texas City, which is about 10 miles south back that way. So they take Buster down to the Texas City Sheriff's Department or what have you. And they're like, well, tell us what happened. And he's like, well, I came home and they were dead. And as they're talking to him, they're noticing that his shoes have blood on them. And they're like, okay, that's interesting. So they tell Buster, they said, hey, why don't you go ahead and take off your shoes and socks? So he takes off his socks and they notice in between his feet, between his toes, is dried blood. And they also notice at the crime scene, which this house right here is where the murders occurred. Now, this is a mobile home now, so it's probably not the same home, but this is where it occurred. And so they tell him, okay, like what's really going on? You got blood in between your toes, dried blood. They took a sample of the dried blood and they took it for an analysis and it matched the victim's blood at the crime scene. So now we have an 18-year-old kid who has his mom's dried up blood caked in between his toes, and now we have a problem. So the response from him goes as follows. So they ask him, they're like, okay, what really happened? And I'm sure there's a lot of interrogation. I'm sure maybe they're threatening him with jail or threatening him with prison or whatever it is that they're going to do. So finally he confesses and he says, I killed both of them. Okay, so we're all wondering, as whoever is watching this video right now, as well as me putting my self in the position of law enforcement at the time. You're talking to this 18-year-old kid. Why would you want to kill the woman that gave you a home over your head when nobody else would? And he says, because I caught them in an unnatural sex position. Okay. So he claims that he was drinking with his friends. He comes home and his foster mom, Elvie, and her friend Martha are supposedly getting it on. Now, regardless of the fact of whether that's true or not, who frickin' cares what they were doing? They're both grown adults. Obviously, this guy is an outright psycho. So they arrest him and they charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder, and he is sitting in the Galveston County Jail. Now, he's in that jail for a long time. I mean, he's in that jail upwards of over 2.5 years. And in the other video on my other channel that I'm finishing up on is where he meets, at the jail, he meets Butch Ainsworth and a couple other guys, and they all escape. So they escaped the jail for about maybe, I'm guessing like 2 days or so. So eventually there's a manhunt for them, and they track them to a town not very far from here. Town starts with an F. I don't remember, Flatonia or something like that, Flantona. And so there's a helicopter in the sky that's circling over them because they got them, cornered in this wooded area. They had taken hostages at that time. They had like 3 hostages. One of them was a former, or wasn't at that time, a sheriff's deputy who Butch ended up shooting. One of the inmates that escaped ended up being killed either by Ronnie Roper or Butch Ainsworth. Butch Ainsworth was a real nasty person. So eventually they all get caught. Butch Ainsworth ends up not being charged with the death of one of the escaped inmates, Joseph McMahon, who ended up getting shot. I really don't know who shot him. It could have been Roper. It could have been Ainsworth. It could have been whoever. But anyways, so Buster Harris ends up. I don't even know if they ended up charging him with any of the murder or the shooting of the deputy. They charged Ainsworth with that shooting, but he ends up getting convicted of the murders of his foster mom and her friend, and he's sentenced to die in the electric chair. But I think in 1972, the Supreme Court outlawed capital punishment as, what do they call it? Cruel and unusual punishment. So for about 5 years or so, the death penalty is outlawed in the United States. Later on, they brought it back in 1977. But anybody that was sentenced to die in the country at that time, if you had your punishment turned to life in prison, once they made the death penalty legal again, they didn't give you the death penalty. You just got life in prison. So Buster Harris ended up just doing his time, and I believe he died in prison. Don't quote me on that. I think he died in prison. I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm getting confused with another story because this car right here is, I don't know if he was going to run me over or whatever, but no, Buster ended up dying in prison. And here we are at the Hollywood Cemetery, about 45-50 miles north of the murder location. And this is the grave of Elvie French Morwood. She was the foster mother of Carl, brutally murdered, along with Martha Bean. Yeah, just another weird story. Another no-account loser. This woman takes him into her home, tries to help him, and he pays her back by murdering her and her friend. So, got to be careful about who you meet, who you help, because at the end you know, people will, no pun intended, stab you in the back. And that is very, very true. All right, rest in peace to both LV and Martha. Okay, guys. I'm Lamont, Fascinating Graveyard. I'm heading out of Houston. We're going north. We're going that away. That away. The air is so cool now that humidity has blown over. It rained a little bit. It really cooled things down. Okay, guys, I'm out of here. I'll catch up with you later. Have a good one. Peace out.